So what is this project about? Open source program is a project which was basically focused on processing and managing all the applications which the open source programs like GSoC or Outreachy require. So it was a project which required a lot of brainstorming, understanding the needs of the user, admin, students, doing a lot of research, and it was a from scratch project. So I had to start from setting up of the project to deploying the MVP. Also, when I saw it in the ideas list, I realized that I can develop it with a tech stack which I'm habituated to. So I found it quite interesting and I went ahead with it. The goal of this project, the main goal of open source programs is to simplify management and filtering work during selection processes by automating most of the procedures which the admins follow throughout the selection processes, which can just be done by a simple application. So the tech stack which I have used in this project, for the backend, I've used Django and Django REST framework. For the front end, React and Redux. As database, we have used Postgres and Postman and Newman for API docs and testing. So phase one, these were the goals of my phase one. So first of all, I had to develop the registration in the portal, the email confirmation on a user registering. This was important because many times users might enter emails which are not relevant and then later communication cannot be generated with them. So email confirmation was an important step. Next, I went on to logging, routing throughout the application, and navigation within it, like changing of tabs, etc. Then I went on to filling and editing of the personal information of a user. While registration, we are not taking in all the information which is required for perfect processing of any application. So we needed extra information like full names, what role the user is, and their user IDs for various platforms. Next, I developed the displaying list of the forms from the user end and the admin end based on whether the forms were published or unpublished. Published and unpublished forms can be viewed by the admins, but the users can only view published forms. Next, phase two deliverables. In phase two, I focused on creating the forms, editing the fields inside the forms from the admin side. From the user side, the user could view the created form and the admin could preview it too. Next, I went on to uploading files. So the files were decided not to be stored on the server. Instead, they were to be stored on the AWS bucket. So what I had to do was, as the user uploads a file, from the front end only, I had to run scripts which will upload the file to the bucket, return the URL, which gets stored to the backend. Next, I went on to filling in form responses. Users had to fill in the form responses and we had to store them and display them to the admin. So this was a very major task. Next was viewing of the submissions by the admins. So whatever responses are submitted by the students in different forms, those can be viewed. Along with it, the profile of the user, which has various details about them, can also be viewed. Next, phase three. In phase three, majorly I focused on the submissions and the extra stats which were to be integrated. So we decided on automatic updating of the submission status by the admins. So the admins can accept, reject forms or applications from the application itself. So this was developed. Next, filling of form responses and updating them. So just filling of them was not important. Editing the form responses and being able to view your own form responses was also important. Next, to ease the admin's work, I integrated a search feature in the submissions list in which the admins can search various submissions using the name of the user or the names of the forms. Next, we did integration of Zulip stats. So the community requires the to know whether the interaction of a student is very well with the community or not, and how much the student is performing. So that's why the Zulip stats can be automatically viewed in the dashboard. Instead of going to Zulip and checking their availability again and again, the admins can now directly view important Zulip stats on the dashboard itself. So one of the goals which stretched far apart from the phase 3 was addition of the GitHub stats in the dashboard also. So admins require important data like number of PRs or issues created on GitHub and the activity of a person on GitHub of the organization. So these stats also needed to be displayed in the same dashboard. Next, now I'll give a demo of the whole application. So I'll start with the register feature. While registering, we added various form validations also so that wrong data does not get entered. So I'll try entering an email which is not of the correct format, and also a password which is very short and not safe. You can see that it throws an error constantly. So until and unless an email is of the correct format, we cannot register. Also, the passwords need to have 12 characters, one small character, one capital, a special character, and a number compulsorily in them. So I'm trying to enter that way. Now let's log in using an user I already created. So this is the dashboard of the user as soon as you log in. Here you can see your profile information which you have entered. This is the list of the forms you have already filled. These are your Zulip stats. Now a user can refresh their Zulip stats. As you can see, these stats were refreshed 3 hours ago. So we'll refresh them. And as the Zulip stats get refreshed, it takes a few seconds to upload it. Now we saw that these stats got updated few seconds ago and the messages also increased. Now we view a form, we can see the responses. This is the file which I had uploaded previously. Now it gets downloaded automatically when you try to upload it. So if I want to change the file, I can choose a different file and try uploading it to the AWS. So now I see this file gets downloaded. So it is successfully submitted. So since this is the admin side, all the forms can be viewed, published forms and unpublished forms. Now I'll create a form and show how to go about that. Publish it, then we create. Here we can see the new form got created. It has 0 fields. It is published and its target user is all. Closing a form actually stops the responses from the user. So this is a major activity. So a warning should be generated. So on clicking of the close button, a warning gets generated that this form will stop all the responses and you can just not revert your action. Clicking on yes closes the form. We see as it gets updated, it shifts to the top and the form is closed. Republishing can publish it again. Now a closed form cannot be edited. So if we try to see the fields, we see that we cannot edit it somehow. We can only preview it in the format it is. Now I'll try to view a form which is not closed. So this is a form which is not closed and it can be edited as the save button is also visible. I'll try editing this field. When I preview it, I see the field name has got updated. Now let's fill in these responses and see how everything works. This is a date picker field. So on clicking on this, you can pick the date from the date picker and it gets entered. Now next is a time field. So as you can see, you get to choose the hours and then you can choose the minutes also. So the time gets done. Checkboxes, so multiple answers can be selected here. In choices, only one of them can be selected. Can select anything from the drop down. Paragraph answer. These are longer than the short answers. Choose a file to upload. I upload it. You can see the URL is already uploaded and I submit this. Now even after submitting, can edit it and the edited data gets submitted again. Go back to edit mode, I go back here. You can see I edited it and I submitted it twice, so the edited data is free. Sharing of a form. Now admins can share the form links for other users to be able to fill them. So just on a button click, you get the URL of a form and you can easily share it. Let's go back to all forms. Now forms can be edited, deleted also. So we can try deleting a form from here. You get a confirmation message that a form is deleted and it's no longer visible in the list. Let's try editing a form. As you can see that the description target user get edited. We can also switch from publish to unpublish and vice versa. So I'll try publishing a form. This has 2 fields and I see that it got published and moved to the top of the list. I try unpublishing it. It goes back to the previous list. So these are the various actions which you can perform with the form, and this makes it very flexible. So these are the user submissions we have received till now. I filled one of these forms just now. So now from here, the admins can accept your application, reject, or waitlist your application. By default, it is always in pending mode. Now you can see, I'll try searching here. So we have 3 different forms. Let's try to select 2 from the list. Let's select this one and so you can see that of all these forms, these 2 responses are there and we can view them. On clicking of any one of this, the admin gets directed to the user profile. This is very similar to the dashboard which you can view. So the admin can view any user's dashboard who has submitted responses to a form. The Zulip stats can be viewed. The profile is the admin cannot refresh the Zulip stats, only the user can. And a list of all the forms they have filled. Now I try to view these responses. You can see all these responses came and the admin can now see your answers. So this was a demo of the front end. Let's log out. Now in the backend, I have integrated API testing using Postman and Newman. You can see these are the various API requests which I've created. I'll run a few of them and show. So this is a get forms list. Where you can view all the questions. These are all the possible fields of the forms. Now let's try creating a form. So I want to create form via Postman. Form got created and you can see the API response here. You can get a list of all the forms. Since this is an admin view, the admin can view all the published, unpublished, and the closed forms. Get a list of all the responses which have been filled. So there are 3 responses till now and you can see 3 API requests. So this was the demo of the whole application. Now I would like to describe a few challenges which I faced in the 3-month coding phase. First thing was the email send feature. As I mentioned in the registration, while coding the registration API, I also had to integrate the send email feature, which will generate a token and a specific URL to which the user can go and log in into their profile. So that was a new thing for me because I had used SendGrid's API for that, and SendGrid's API does not have such a wonderful documentation in which the variables and all are not so clear. So that took me some time to complete. Also, it involved generating unique URLs, unique tokens which were specific to the user and activating on visiting the URLs. So I had to do a lot of research based on that, and that took a lot of time. Next was uploading to AWS. I had no previous knowledge of AWS buckets or keys or how to use them. And neither does AWS have any documentation or tutorial specific to integrating it with React.js. There is one with JavaScript, which is in Node.js, but it's very different. And all the documentation mentioned there were related to backend frameworks. So this was something which required a lot of research and experimenting and errors and debugging. Like there was some since there was no documentation, I had to figure out ways, search for blogs in which I could find some snippets of scripts. In spite of doing all this, also in the end, I faced a lot of errors due to variables and other problems which were coming up because there was no specific documentation which I could use as a guide. Next, errors in React state updates. Like as we all know, React state updates are a wonderful thing for the front end. But once you get stuck at an error in state updates, it is very difficult to understand why the problem is occurring and how to fix it because there is no specific debugging related to it. So in between, I used to face bugs which were related to state updates, and it took quite some time to change. But it would be a huge bug, but would get changed with minor code changes or changes in the process in which I had written it. So these were learnings for me also. Next, integrating GitHub APIs. GitHub APIs have limits, which is creating like problems in testing. So while testing, I need to make multiple API requests to get the request, filter it, uh, run for loops or if else conditions on the API requests. So that actually, whenever I used to sit with the issue, it usually used to reach the rate limit and delay the whole process. Code quality. Before the start of GSoC period, I wasn't much aware about JavaScript coding guidelines because I didn't have any major experience in coding in JavaScript or React beforehand. So I learned a lot throughout the process, and I also learned how important it would be. So my mentors would review my PRs and point out me on improving code quality. So that would lead to a few delays. What I learned basically throughout GSoC and my major learnings, which I would say is like the importance of documentation and maintaining code quality. Documentation is really important. Like I have integrated Zeolab API and Circuit API with the application, and honestly speaking, so much specific documentation is not mentioned there, where everything is in as much as detailed. Like we can look at Django documentation and find that it is wonderful and really detailed, and the user can easily understand what to go about and what errors, how the error could be solved. But that was not the case with while working with Zulip APIs or Centrate API. So I kept in mind to maintain proper documentation while I wrote the code of this application, and also maintaining consistent code quality because this is an open source project and there is a lot of future scope to this project. So there will be future contributors who will be willing to write code, and if it is not consistent, then many people will follow different guidelines and the code will not be easily understandable. So maintaining code quality and documentation along with other code comments and documentation is very important. Next, handling errors and debugging. So while GSoC, while the planning period was going on, I used to plan and figure out that this issue won't take up much time and this issue can get solved in 2 days or 3 days. But while really doing it and coding it, I realized that many errors come up and a lot of debugging processes have to be followed then. So what we plan at times is not necessarily going to get so easily done at the moment. So we obviously like need to know better error handling techniques and debugging techniques to quickly handle errors which come and resolve them as soon as possible. Working with Redux. This was my first experience in working in the front end and also my first experience in Redux. And I really felt wonderful how Redux simplifies the front end state management so easily, and it minimizes API calls just by handling everything in the reducers, like easy updates of patch requests, and like without making an API call only after you delete something from the front end, your list can automatically get updated. So this was a really wonderful experience. This project has a lot of future development opportunities. I have like mentioned a few over here only. So first, going notifications and mailing feature on the updating status of any form. As I showed in the demo, the admin can update the pending, accepted, rejected, and waitlisted status of any student on an application. Currently, that does not send any notification to the student in the application, neither does the person receive an email mentioning the same. So this would be a very important integration which is required in the future, so that students can automatically get updated about their application status and not be panicking or wait until when they open the application next. Next, admin sign up does not have a specific front end process to be followed right now. So the feature which can be integrated is that approval of admin sign up. So whenever any user selects their role as an admin, they don't get access rights directly until and unless it gets approved from another admin of the application. The second thing can be an invite feature for admin sign up. Like instead of this approval, admins can invite for other admins to sign up, so they directly get the access rights needed for the application. A cross-platform app with specific features will be wonderful for the students. Like for mobile application, we don't need all the features to be integrated in it. But if the student wants quick updates on their phone and moving around anywhere in it, but if the student wants anywhere anytime, few important features like notifying regarding the all the features to be integrated in the acceptance state or whether a new form available or not, and these quick things can be like done for the mobile application so that it gets very easy. Important like more elaborative and for the mobile application so that it gets very easy. Currently, register form and the login form have access everything quickly. Just detailed form validations, and not all the other forms are so properly validated so that users can understand where they are going wrong, been performed correctly or not. So more and more form validations so that there are lesser chances of making errors on the back end should be integrated. This will give a great user experience to everybody and make the UX more interactive. Next are some frequently asked questions about the project. So how can any contributor like debug if they are facing an error or something? So the first step which they should follow is refer to the documentation first and then like go for anything else. Secondly, they can try basic debugging techniques which are used in Python or JavaScript, like print statements, so that they can figure out where the function is going wrong or what is the current situation of the function, or Google searches. If nothing of the above works, then they can obviously go ahead and ask someone in the community. This is the link to the Zeolib of the open source programs channel. The live application has not been deployed yet. It is yet to be deployed after the GSoC coding phase, because first of all, there are discussions on the changing of names going forward, because it is more of a processing and forms oriented application rather than just related to open source programs like GSoC or Outreachy. So after these discussions get finalized by everyone, then we will be deploying this application. Where can people find more about the project? These are the backend documentation, front end, and this is my final report on the MVP first GSoC. I'll show this. This is the backend documentation. You can find various guidelines here on fork, clone, making a pull request, specific coding standards which need to be followed, commit message guidelines while contributing. Next, I'll show the front end documentation. This is very similar to the backend only, except a few specific things. I've described the main concepts of the application here. Some discussions on the technical decisions which have been taken. You can have a look at the database design. This is what the database somewhat looks like. For user authentication, it has been documented of how we've used JWT token and how JWT tokens work. Next, the final report. This is the GSoC final report, which has a summary of all the documentation related. I'll show the API documentation. So Postman can automatically generate these API documentation with the URL, the type of request, description, headers which are necessary for each and every request. Over here, you can switch the language. If you want to switch to and it shows as to how you can use these APIs in that specific language. So this is a very flexible and wonderful API documentation. You can go to any specific here. What are the headers you will require? The body should be of which format? And it can be switched to any language, which is the best thing about Postman API docs. Next, I've included links to all the blogs which I have written throughout GSoC. They contain a lot of information, like one of them was on uploading to AWS buckets. Then in one of them, I've described about API testing using Postman and Newman and how it is great to be used. Then I have explained about state management in Redux, and so these blogs will help more into summarizing the projects and detailed understanding of what processes we have followed in the project. This shows a summary of all the important contributions. And as I mentioned previously also, GitHub integration and deployment of the application is yet to be done. There is a lot of future scope of this application, and we are willing to invite people and to contribute in this project. So overall experience at GSoC has been really great. I learned a lot throughout this. Beginning from the community bonding period, I have learned on planning an application properly, figuring out what problems you might face so that you can set the deadlines accordingly. And my mentors have been really helpful throughout the whole process. They have been flexible with timing, spanning out throughout the week and ready to help me whenever I needed them. I learned a lot of new techniques, especially I learned a lot about code quality in Django and React, and how we can refactor code and shorten it as much as possible and get that short snippet of code to do the maximum work it can do. Also, these brainstorming sessions and discussion sessions with my mentors and admins have developed my thinking ability a lot and gave me a lot of problem solving ideas and how to approach any problem and how to reach the solution of it very easily. Along with this, like, I became very organized during this time because I went about handling multiple sheets, documentation, and writing in various repositories, and managing multiple PRs and issues, and handling it all well and perfectly, finishing things on deadline. So as a person, I would say that I became more organized during this period, and I really wish to thank my mentors and admins who always helped me out so much and supported me in this whole journey. Thank you.
So I have a question about your GSoC journey. It has been quite an experience this summer, and there are a lot of people who want to go through the same, like for a variety of reasons, like to get into open source, to upskill themselves in terms of coding, as well as for reasons like to get a chance to interview with Google. So, if you have to say to GSoC aspirants one key thing that they can look forward to take away from this program, what would it be?
Learning would be one important thing. Like, even if you feel you know the tech stack or something, you still get to learn something new or the other. And you face new problems anytime you're developing anything. So learning would be a very important thing which they will experience, and a wonderful experience, like working across various time zones and working with a team. Like, as a team you have to develop something, and you feel like you have contributed something not just for your own learning but also for the community and for many more people who are affected by the work the community is doing. So that feels great because you get to write something which is making a change somewhere, which is making someone's life easier somewhere. So that is a wonderful experience which any GSoC student will carry forward. Thank you.